This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. And the subject we're talking about is bull lying. Bull lying. And let me explain to those who are listening if you want to know what that's all about. Um, I know that I was bullied when I was in grade school. And when I confronted those individuals later on in life, um, they all denied it, which, we were kids, so they figured that they could get away with it. However, in the last maybe 5, 6 years, I've come in contact with some of them, whether it be through Facebook or just going back to my old hometown and finding out that, hey, now they do remember. They were sort of mean kids. And I'm actually getting apologies this late in life. And I didn't confront them necessarily to get their apology. Um, Part of me was confronting them to verify that my memory was what I thought it was, or was I making up stories? And I realized I'm not. And that's why we thought that we would talk about this because bullying seems to be happening all around us. So today we have Sahara with us. And as I told her before we went live today, um, I've met with her once through a podcast. I've been following her online, and you look at her and you go, she's got it all together. How could she ever have been bullied? And yet, anybody could be a target. So, welcome to the show and give us a little bit of background. Like, when did you first recognize that maybe you were being bullied?
I think my first experience of really being bullied actually happened first grade by a teacher
Oh, wow.
who just, I don't know, like she always would have parent teacher conferences and the comments were always, doesn't it irritate you that she twirls her hair? Doesn't it irritate you that her crayons fall off of her desk all the time? And it was just something about me that rubbed this woman the wrong way. And I was 6 years old. Like, so yeah, it can happen to anybody by anybody because people are just triggered in life and they don't necessarily know why they're triggered or how they're triggered, and we are not given the tools to deal with that. So it happens among peers, it happens, at work among different levels of of corporateness. It happens in school between children and teachers,
Absolutely.
and it sucks, and I don't know how to change it other than we need to start to have a deeper connection to ourselves and our emotions and learn how to deal with these things as opposed to lashing out at other people.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember when I was growing up and I came home and said to my mother and father, you know, these girls, they don't like me, they bully me, um, they don't invite me to their sleepovers and whatever. My mother would say to me, well, then go find other friends, as if it were that simple, because you were in the classroom with this group of people all day long. Um, and then one day my mother said to me, you say you're being bullied, but individually, these young girls would invite me to their house, would invite me for a sleepover, but it was in the group.
Yeah.
And um, it took me years to really understand uh, that I was okay one on one, but I was not okay one in a group. And I look back and yes, when I confronted some of them, they're right. They didn't bully me individually. Okay. But once they got into this clique, either I perceived it or they truly were bullying me. So I love how you mentioned that you were only 6 years old and you were twirling your hair, which a lot of people do. And
I still do it.
yeah, and now that my hair is long, I do it too, and I'm always playing with it. Um, and yet here it was a teacher who couldn't have a conversation with her 6-year-old student. Um, why did it bother her that you were twirling your hair? Maybe she thought there was an issue, a problem, and this was your safeguard. If she could have had that communication first with you, then with your parents, um,
Mm.
it could have gone in a whole different direction.
I actually saw a real disconnect with teachers all the way across the board. So I started getting like full-time bullied in 8th grade. Essentially, I flew under the radar. I wasn't a popular kid, but I wasn't an unpopular kid. I was just middle of the road. And one of the popular boys, I caught his eye. We started dating, as you do, Um, I was at 12. And one of the popular girls had a crush on him and proceeded to make the next 5 years of my life a living hell. And it was that group mentality. Nobody singularly had an issue with me, but as a group, everybody had an issue. And I know that even in my own friend group, that we were very tight knit, they would not stand up for me when they would see it happen publicly, because they don't want to put themselves in the position of
Right.
now getting bullied. But I had boys that would, write me love letters and just be like, I really like you, but then have to, in that group mentality, shove me into my locker. Like I was physically assaulted in
Oh, wow.
school
Yep.
by boys, by girls through my whole high school career. And it's really interesting to me because I had a lot of trauma happening at school. I had some trauma happening at home. And I was like the all-American girl. My hair was always perfect. I had makeup on. I always dressed smartly. I was an athlete. I was a very good athlete. I was top of my class. I was first flute. I was head of
Oh.
choir. I was all of these things. I was your like textbook perfect child. And I came back to school, I think it was maybe my junior year, and I was a completely different person. So you like one person left in June and another person showed up in September. I chopped all my hair off. I was full goth and I had a real attitude problem. And I could not have cared less about school. Um, and it's really interesting to me that that didn't send off alarms. And like looking back as an adult, I'm thinking, we need to pay our teachers more and they need to have trauma training and they need
Right.
to have psychology training. Because while we like to say that our teachers don't raise our children, they
They do.
do.
Yes.
They spend more time with our children than we do. They see more of our children than we do. And if I saw this perfect child leave in June and come back a completely different person 3 months later, I would go, hang on, I should pull her aside and talk to her. And that didn't happen. And instead, I was reprimanded. Things were taken away from me by teachers, you're sent to the principal's office, like all of this different stuff happened. And I'm just thinking, how did anybody miss what was going on? I mean, I was
Exactly.
super depressed. I was suicidal. I had an eating disorder for the sake of seeing how skinny I could get before somebody would notice as a cry for help. And I was reprimanded.
And
I set records swimming in school and I just dropped out of swimming. Just like, yeah, I'm not going to show up anymore. I'm not going to do this anymore. And just, it amazes me that I was met with discipline as opposed to curiosity.
and that's not unusual. And I'm glad you brought that up because I've shared this in other podcasts and I've gotten some really nasty email. So if you guys who are listening want to write me nasty email, it won't be the first. Um, but my son was grade school. He was pretty good condition. Okay, he had friends. He could play with them and whatever. Um, However, my son was diagnosed in first grade being on the autism spectrum. And they felt at his school that it was best every year when they came back in September, he greeted his class, he shared with them that he had some oddities, but hey, I'm still the kid that you knew last year, the year before. And that worked in elementary school. Yeah, there were a few kids who picked on him, but not to the point that he even cared or noticed. But junior high and high school, it was almost like what you were talking about. It was night and day. His doctor changed his medication, and in 30 days, he ballooned 50 pounds. And of course, nobody at the school contacted us, didn't say a word about it. It was like, we kept calling the doctor, like, yesterday he could wear his pants. Today he can't. And the doctor would say to us, oh, don't worry, it'll all get taken care of. So for the first 2 years of middle school, he was a blimp. Okay. And that's when the teasing got worse, and by one particular individual. And we would go to the school and we would say, you know, what can we do about this? And they'd go, we'll send him home for a week. No, you're going to send my son home? He's getting bullied. What about the kid who's bullying him? Yeah, but he's a good kid. He probably doesn't mean anything. So you take your son home and protect him for a week. And we did this all the way through high school. In the meantime, uh, not only was he getting bullied, but his dad and I were getting bullied because the school didn't want to deal with it. So you are so correct that we have to train our teachers and pay them more for it. We have to train our administration that when somebody comes in looking different than they did just a couple months ago, I mean, the transformation that you went through, I think would be shocking for me to take a look and go, wait a second, you were perfect and everything looked great on the outside. Now everything doesn't look great on the outside. So, which is the truth? Who are you really? Are you the girl
Yeah.
from last year or is this you? And yet, teachers today now are so afraid of getting involved because they think that they're going to get sued. They don't know what they can say, what they can't say. And yet, individuals in school bully, and then it goes into the workplace. So let me ask you, when did you switch out of goth? Because
I don't know if
that's
I
not
ever did.
teachable.
There's
Oh,
aspects of me. No, I mean, and I'm not saying that like J. Crew, it means that you're having a perfect life, and goth
right.
means that you're in some messed up space. I I felt comfortable with that expression of myself.
Sure.
But that was kind of like me moving into more freedom, and I was owning my own freedom
Got
and,
it.
breaking away from what I'd been told was the norm. I am an artist and a musician. So I then, I moved to New York City and just kind of continued this, I'd wear all sorts of stuff. So, and I still, I have a closet that is ridiculous. Like you're just like, was these like 20 people that are sharing this closet? Like, I don't understand. Because I do believe in expressing whatever mood I'm in through my body art.
Absolutely. Well, and there's nothing wrong with that because depending who you're with at the time, okay, um, if you're comfortable enough to make those changes so that you're more comfortable in that circle, I think that's great. So
Yeah.
many of us, you know, we don't do that, and then we want to know, well, how come we're the only ones who appear not to be having a good time tonight? Well, you don't have to change everything about you, but sometimes, conforming just a little bit so that there's a natural, communication between you and others.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I've traveled all over the world and I find myself conforming quite a bit, so that I don't get harassed. And even when I moved to New York City, you think like, oh, you moved to New York City, like what a melting pot. Like it's just pure insanity there. You should be able to do whatever
Yeah.
you want. I was still harassed. And I do feel that it is people who dare to be themselves that are the ones that society punishes and people attack. And there was this beautiful podcast I was watching the other day, and I don't want to butcher his name, so I won't even try. But well, their name, they are non-binary, and they dress, I envy the way they dress. And they were talking about that people who say, they were saying specifically gender non-binary,
Okay.
but I guess you could say for anybody who is really being their authentic self, they are beaten up by society because society is upset that they, as a group of people, have given up their identity. And when you choose to conform, to fit in, to be comfortable, and you give up your own expression of self, and you want to do something or say something or be something and you don't because of what other people are going to think, you have resentment towards yourself. You have created a wound and violence towards yourself. And when you see somebody else doing it, that piece of you that is wounded, that has been violated by yourself, looks at them and says, I can't do it. How dare you do it? And they go and destroy that person. And I was like, I'd never heard it articulated as well as they articulated it. And if you're familiar with the Man Enough podcast, it was a very recent podcast there. And I think anybody who has been bullied needs to listen to that podcast, because they were so incredibly eloquent with the way they expressed their pain and their bullying and their viewpoint about why it's happening. I was blown away. It was just like the most amazing words I've ever heard in my life.
Well,
and so validating.
Well, and we talked about this in the other podcast that you were on, how to super age, that so many of us want to be authentic, but we've been told somewhere along the line, no, that doesn't suit you. Okay. This is who you have to be. I'm not here to put down my mother. God love her. She meant the world to me. But my mother would tell me, as you get older, you have to wear your hair short, because if your hair isn't short, you're going to look old. Okay. Well, I didn't listen to my mother. And, I used to like it short. I don't like it short anymore. But if I would have listened to everything that she wanted me to do, I wouldn't have been my authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
But yet there were times around her I wasn't, because I knew it made her happy, and I could do that for that short period of time. And just, okay, mom, this is the person that this is the one that you love. And, we don't have to not necessarily complain, but we don't have to point out what we consider the flaws in each other.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality of it is we all have flaws.
Yeah.
Okay. And some of those flaws we create because we want to find ourselves. So you mentioned before we went online that you have even been bullied recently by other women.
Over a dude. It's always over a dude.
Oh my gosh.
Find a better reason.
Oh my gosh. I thought we had gotten over things like that.
God, no, because we're not healing our wounds.
So when that happened to you, okay, here you are an adult, and you have, I would assume, more control of your wants and needs. How did you react? What did you say? What did you do?
I think the first few times I didn't react probably very well. I reacted in anger. And then I recognized that just fueled the fire. But I mean, these people took out fake Instagram accounts, fake Facebook accounts, fake Yelp accounts. They attacked my business. They attacked my character. I mean, publicly, just, it was unbelievable. And I had to, it happened a lot over a period of time. And I think I had to just get used to it. And I had to just be like, there's nothing I can do, because you feel helpless. And now it's like, okay, whatever privately is happening, that's private, but now you've dragged my business into it. Now you've actually gone forward and attacked my customers who are leaving comments on my business page, and, attacking, all like people's gender, attacking people's sexuality. And I'm like flagging all this stuff, and people are flagging all this stuff on Facebook and on Yelp, and it's going completely unresolved. Like they're just ignoring it. And it's a helpless feeling. And then at some point you have to just be like, you know what? I feel safe in myself. I'm confident in myself. If somebody comes here and believes this crap, there's nothing I can do about that. And they're probably not the client for me. But, I think most people are going to come there and say, okay, she's 5-star reviews. Everything is a 5-star review. And then there's this one review that I, because I'm allowed to respond to, where I was like,
Sure.
This person never came to see me. I wasn't even living in the country at this time. And I just have to trust that the right people are always going to find me. And that just comes back to faith in myself, trusting my own abilities.
Absolutely.
And that nothing is going to deter me from what I am deserving of.
Well, I find that women tend to be more devious than men. And I could be wrong because I'm not a man. But I know that recently, through my podcast, I've had people contact me and, just why do you have to do that? And, you should do it this way. And if it's constructive criticism, I love it. Because we all get into a mode of doing things the same way over and over again. But some of these were very biting. And it took me back to being in elementary school. I didn't have my mama to go to and say, help me. And it it made me stop and think that they're doing this because either they want what I have, or they're just not being successful in what they have. And like you, I had to take that back road and say, you know what? I'm just going to ignore them the best I can. It's not that I don't read it when it comes out. It's not that I don't hear it when occasionally, I'll get this phone call and it's like, oh, I haven't talked to you in a long time. And then they're part of the conversations about all the things they don't like about me. Um, and so I think this dialogue is important because I think we have to start to understand, like you said, who we are ourselves, be comfortable with that. Um, and then maybe that will trickle down to the people who are the bullies because they're missing something. And we all know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I always think when somebody is harmful to me because they have had harm done to them, so they're reacting.
Right.
I just put them in my meditation, send them unconditional love, because that's what they need.
Right.
At the end of the day, so if you're being bullied, know that other person needs far more love in their life.
Interesting.
Because they wouldn't be bullying you if they were a happy person. A happy person doesn't need to tear someone else down.
Right.
A happy person is very happy to give you a hand and say, come on up here. Let's help each other. We don't need to live in a world of scarcity. Like, you're rad, you're doing something awesome. I'm rad, I'm doing something awesome. Let's do something together, or let's support each other. It is always, if somebody is harming you in any way, know that they're coming from a hurt place. That doesn't make it okay, but it is something that I wish I knew at that age. I wish when I was a teenager that I didn't feel that other people's words were a reflection of who I am, that it's actually a reflection of who they are.
Absolutely.
And I took it to heart, and I became insecure because of somebody else's insecurity. And that's really unfortunate. And I had a lot of years of therapy to work through that. And I find that speaking up has helped me greatly in every avenue, speaking up for other people, speaking up for causes that I believe in, going on podcasts and talking about hard things.
Right.
I was on a podcast a couple months ago where we were talking about rape, and the podcast um, interviewer, had said to me, I don't know how you can have such a lightness to you when talking about sexual assault and the things that have happened to you. And I was like, what else can I do about it? All I can do is take my experiences and put them out into the world so that other people don't have to suffer the way I did.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The
And
more we talk about this stuff, the less it's going to happen because we're going to call those people out.
well, what made me get this started, and you may have read it on Facebook or on our website, is that my son is experiencing PTSD because of the bullying he went through. And there were so many things that his dad and I thought he was going through, but he never told us. And when we would sort of ask, he would just like, no, no, that's not happening. And now we're finding out that some of our suspicions were true. Um, but he called today because he was upset about something. And as he was saying it to me, he said, I know other people knew what was happening to me. Why didn't they come forward? He said, maybe if they had come forward, my bully would have led a different life. Maybe he could have gotten the help that he needed, which I thought, wow,
Beautiful.
that's you're in a very hurt place right now and you're bringing that up. Maybe
Yeah.
he could have been better off. And I said to him, it's because people are afraid to get involved. They're afraid they're going to be the next victim, okay? Or that maybe they misunderstood it, or maybe you're going to get mad at them for defending you. I said, so you can be upset because those are your feelings. You're allowed to have those, but you can't put it on somebody else for not protecting you. And he just said, I know all this, but why does it still hurt? I said, because it's still fresh in your mind now. You need to work through this. So, for those of you listening, if all of a sudden you get a text from somebody and it sparks something, has nothing to do with that person, but it sparks that something that's been sitting in your chest, and all of a sudden now it hurts. Um, you have to talk about it. You have to get it out there. Um, Again, you also have to let people see who you are and realize that it doesn't make any difference how old you are, what race you are, what you politically believe in, um, tall, short, all those things. It doesn't matter. All of us can get bullied. And so
Yeah.
when I said that to you at the beginning, Sahara, well, who would have expected you? I'm talking about how I thought about this maybe 6 months or a year ago, that the beautiful people, the smart people, it doesn't happen to them. And yet it does.
Yeah. And some of us are overachievers because we're being bullied. So I think it's that gang mentality, you know, and that's why I speak up. And I love that your son is speaking up now and that he has that type of compassion to say it could have been different for all of us.
Right.
And I think the more we speak up, the more that gang mentality becomes that of compassion. So stand up, shout it out from the rooftops, because the more we talk about compassion, the more we bring this stuff up, we are going to flip that narrative from the gang mentality being like, no, we have to ignore that people are being harmed, to we need to be compassionate people and you will not harm other people.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
So tell our audience a little bit about what Sahara does, because we did, say something about business. So uh, there may be some people out there who will appreciate what you do.
So I've kind of taken my history and turned it into my mission, which is to help people take all of the shit and turn it into gold.
I love
So I
it.
say I'm a soul alchemist, and it is digging through that trash can of wounds and experiences and being bullied and being the bully to grow and to heal. So I work specifically with uncovering limiting beliefs that we've created and society's created and our family have created to help us become more compassionate, centered, aligned individuals who can change the narrative of the world so that we don't live fearing helping another person, but instead the people that hurt live fearing the rest of society.
How can they find you?
My website is holisticmojo.com, and everything you need to contact me is through there.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing your story. I hope nobody else ever bullies you again, but we're living in that world where um, we can't guarantee that. But I think you're a smart young woman who will find her way through it. So thank you again. We appreciate you.
Thank you. And thank you for doing this podcast. It's important work.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye bye.